Welcome to my YouTube channel From the Scratch. This is a business clinic meant for business starters and entrepreneurs who wants to leverage on my wealth of experiences in order to build their businesses. My name is Chijioke Chikwesri, an economist, a business strategist, a serial entrepreneur, and most importantly, your business guardian. In my last episode, I was talking about my experience in transportation business, especially investing in Sienna and using the Sienna for transportation business in Nigeria. I was able to mention about some of the experiences and all those things, but I mentioned in my last episode that in my next episode, I'll be talking about the stakeholders that nobody told me about. These are the people that control the transportation sector in Nigeria, especially when you want to invest in transportation as an individual. I'm not talking about big transportation companies like the Gulf Race, the Peace Mass, and what have you. I'm talking about people like you and I that are starting from the scratch. Starting from the scratch. Of course, we may have the hope of becoming these big names I just mentioned, but for now, we are starting from the scratch because we don't have the resources that is required to operate like these big organizations. So back to what I was saying, I mentioned the stakeholders, the invisible stakeholders. So in case you don't really understand where I'm coming from, you need to go and see the first episode of this particular video in order for you to understand where we are coming from. So I mentioned that there are five stakeholders, invisible five stakeholders that nobody told me about. I use the word invisible because nobody will tell you about them until you get to the field. That is why I'm using that word. It's not as if you are not going to see them. They are there. Of course, they are gidiba. You are going to see them in the field. They will come to shake you and you will shake them. And if you are not strong, you may even run away. I'm talking about stakeholders like the park operators. I'm talking about the law enforcement agencies like the VIO, the road safety, the Nigerian police. Then I'm talking about the government of the state, that is the revenue officers. Then I'm talking about the drivers, the people that will be managing that Sienna for you. Then I'm also talking about the mechanics. These are the people you are going to meet when your vehicle develops faults. Of course, if you are using your vehicle for transportation, of course, you are going to see it developing fault. There is another stakeholders that I forgot to mention in my last episode, and they are the people that we call Aboro. That is the touts, people we call touts in Nigeria. They are also involved in these particular stakeholders. And if you want to do transportation business in Nigeria, you are going to really, really make up your mind to work with them. You must work with them whether you like it or not, because they are there. They are part of the system. They are part of the ecosystem. And that is what nobody told me about. So first of all, let me start from the law enforcement agencies. So as I was analyzing my profit in the last one, it's assumed that when my vehicle take off from point A to point B, I've made 7,000 and return back. So if I'm making 7,000 times 2, if I'm making 7,000 times 4 in a, if I'm making 14,000 naira. So as I said, I've already calculated that I'll be making like 28,000 naira if my vehicle can actually go like 2 tons in a day. And of course, I said in my last video that since my vehicle will be picking up passengers for will be fully loaded with 10,500, and I buy tickets for like 500 naira, and then I buy my fuel for like 2,500. That was then, not now. I'm talking about when I started. So I'm buying my fare for 2,500 naira from point A to point B. Of course, if I'm coming, I'll buy again to the first point where I took off from. So I now put all these things. I discovered that I'll be making like 28,000 naira in a day, which I said, even if I'm giving my driver 10,000 naira, 18,000 naira is not a big deal. But I never knew that at the park, after loading, the park officials are going to take like two passengers' money. I mean, the money that is meant for two passengers, they are going to take it out from this vehicle. So let's assume that I'm able to, or my vehicle was loaded for 10,500 naira. That is being seven passengers by 1,500 naira each. That means if I'm buying fuel for 2,500, so it means that my money, if I'm buying for a 2,500, then paying for ticket for 500 naira. So it means my money will be remaining 7,000 naira. Then out of that 7,000 naira, imagine that the park is taking two passengers' money for loading me. Two passengers' money. And if they take these two passengers' money, so that means I'm going to be left with 4,000 naira after loading. So out of that 4,000 naira, I will now have to, if you are lucky that you are moving on the road, you did not fall into, because sometimes all these law enforcement agencies, sometimes you fall into their trap when you don't even understand the offense you must have committed. But to allow peace reign because of the people you are carrying and all those things. So sometimes you will discover that before you arrive at your point B, you must have spent like 1,000 naira to just get there. So it means that what may be remaining with, and if you are lucky that your tire did not burst on the road, or you are lucky that you didn't meet multiple security agencies. You know, when I mentioned security agencies, I mentioned about five. Sorry, when I was talking about security agencies, I mentioned VIO, I mentioned Nigerian police, I mentioned the road safety and all those things. So if you didn't encounter like three of them, that means you are lucky, but you must encounter at least one. So let's assume you encountered one, and then maybe your money is now remaining about 3,000 naira. Then pray on the road that you don't do wrong parking, where you will meet all these people that are called touts in Nigeria, because most times they are not regulated. And then if you meet them, and if God helps you, they allow you to settle, they didn't take you to their office, that means you have lost another point. Another point, I'm talking about 1,000 naira. So you will now discover that before you reach to your point B, maybe what may be there with you, or what will be in your pocket after you must have bought fuel and all those things and paid all the payables that are on the road, you may discover that what is left with you is about 2,000 naira. That is not even the crux of the matter. The crux of the matter is that with your 2,000 naira, of course, you have arrived at point B. So if you are to quickly load there and then return, glory be to God, that will be very, very good. But the problem is that maybe let's assume you load from point A to point B on Monday. You may discover that it may not even reach your turn from that Monday to Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday in that same place. So because other drivers must have gone there to stay. And you must also know that apart from these monies that the park managers are taking from people that are loading their vehicles there, you must register your vehicle. Like in my own case, nobody told me that. I thought that maybe if I buy revenue tickets from the government of the state, then I'm free. I didn't know that I'm going to register in that particular park. In my own case, I think it was, that time it was about 25,000. Then I will now go to the point where my vehicle will be offloading. I'm going to also part with another 25,000. That is 50,000. Then apart from that, anytime I load my vehicle, I'm going to be paying these same park people. They have a specific number of passengers they will be taking from your vehicle. And the issue there is even that when your vehicle breaks down, you will be the one to sort it out. It doesn't concern them. So it doesn't concern them. So it means that it's from your own little money that you are getting. That is where you are going to also be using to fix this vehicle. So as I was telling you, if you move from point A to point B, you may not return back to that point A, maybe until the midweek of that week, maybe on Wednesday or thereabout. So if you manage, so let's assume that after the expenses, like I just mentioned, park people collecting their own and all those things, which was contrary to what I was told from the beginning. And you now realize that maybe after going and returning back, what may be left with you is 7,000 naira. So let's assume that instead of going two times in a day, that you were able to run only 3 times in a week. Only 3 times. And let's assume that from point A to point B and then returning back, that you are making something like 7,000. So it means that if you are going only 3 times in a week, it means that what may accrue to you as the owner of the vehicle may be around 21,000, especially if you are not the one managing it yourself. So if you now have 21,000 naira, remember that is where you are going to be using to maintain the car. That is where you are going to also be using to sort your family issues. That is also where you are going to be using to also repay the vehicle, the money you collected, or to put back the money you moved from any place to invest in that vehicle. So you see, I don't know. That is one part of it. Then coming to deal with the drivers. Yes, you have already seen this particular challenge. Now, the driver is another issue and another person you need to deal with. So you have to really pray unless you want to manage that vehicle by yourself. If you get a wicked and if you get an irresponsible driver, someone that doesn't understand business, someone that doesn't know that that money was not stolen, it's money that is actually money that you must have picked from somewhere, or money that you must have saved out of your sweat in order to raise for you to invest in that kind of business. So if it's somebody that doesn't understand this, and the person is also going to frustrate you. Yes, maybe the day of account, like in my own case, I think within a period of 6 months, I've already changed about 3 drivers before I actually got someone that was very, very sincere to me. Yes, the person was sincere. My last driver was very, very sincere. But the first 2 drivers I worked, God, they were something else. So they will tell you, your driver will tell you, this week I've not gone to work, and maybe it's even that your little 21,000 or 30,000 naira or 35,000. That's what the man is even greedy to also remit to you. The person just assumed that you sit at home, maybe relaxing, you're not doing nothing, you're just sitting down, waiting for him to go and work money to come and give to you, not knowing that, or forgetting so soon that the thing he's using to work was actually provided by someone. You actually worked for it. You put your money, you denied yourself some basic amenities in order to put this investment in place. But of course, it was something that was supposed to generate employment for you, or a source of livelihood for you and this particular driver. But sometimes they used to forget about it. They used to think that they are doing you a favor. And most times you will discover that you'll be running up and down like someone that is mentally unstable. I remember one day that I have to call this driver severally. I have to call and call and call and call. And this person was not picking my calls for more than 3 days after the day that we are supposed to meet for accounts. I was already nursing my losses, and he was putting more frustration on my head. So I have to call this person severally, but the person was not picking calls. What was the issue? The person was now finding it difficult to come and do accounts because he thinks that the money is huge, not knowing that what he was actually sitting on, it will take me not less than at least 3 good years to recover my capital. I'm not talking about profits. I'm talking about my capital, the money, the initial money I invested in it. So if you are not ready to run the business by yourself, that means I'm not really sure that unless you pray to God to give you a driver or someone that really understands that they are not doing you a favor, that instead you are the one doing them a favor by creating a source of livelihood for both you and them. So that is it. So, and then we'll now move on to the next stakeholders. I'm talking about the mechanics. Yes, when you are talking about investing in something, you should also be talking about the repairs. Yes, the repairs, just like we have hospitals in Nigeria for human being, we also have mechanics. You may not really understand the kind of challenge in that sector until you now start visiting them. Some of them can really, really be frustrating, I must tell you. Sometimes you even think that probably it's your village people that is following you around when it comes to the way some mechanics behave. And some of them, when you take your car to them, they will even they will make your car to become worse than you took it to them, because they just want to make money. Nobody cares about your feelings. Nobody cares about the kind of stress you are passing through. Nobody wants to hear your story. Or everything they think about is how to, how to extort you. Everybody want to extort you. The park people want to extort you. Mechanics want to extort you. Law enforcement agencies want to extort you. So everybody just want to extort you. So those are the things that you see in that place. Some people, if you are not there, if you go there and give them your car to repair for you and you are not there, that means they will not even do it. Or even if they will do it, they will just manage. I remember a scenario where I took my car to a mechanic during those days to for the mechanic to put it in order. What was actually the problem was just to change the brake pad. So this mechanic dumped the vehicle and then was doing other work. So when I now started calling him, so I have to come when I started calling him, that I was expecting him to deliver the vehicle to me. He now told me that he was coming. So I waited. I was no longer comfortable. I decided to visit this man. When I got to his garage, I saw that he fixed my vehicle, and then I collected the vehicle. Man, as I was going home that day, I now decided to apply brake. So when I applied brake, I was hearing this sound. I was not very comfortable. So I called him back. I said, this sound was not in this vehicle when I brought this vehicle to you. What is it? He said, I shouldn't worry. It's because he changed the brake pad. Remember, I was a novice. He changed the brake pad, that I shouldn't worry, very soon that they are going to repair, that the thing will normalize. As I was going home, it was becoming worse. So the next day, somebody advised me to go to another mechanic to really go and try. So when I got to the mechanic, when the mechanic now lose the tire, they now discovered that some of the clips where the brake pad supposed to be clipped in this vehicle were no longer there. So that's now made me to start thinking, some of the accidents we are having in Nigeria or in Africa may even be as a result of nonchalant attitudes of some mechanics. So that is why you need to also be there when they are repairing your car. So when I discovered that more than, I think, 2 or 3 clips of that of my vehicle brake pads were missing. So when I call and I discovered that he used a carton, thick carton, folded them to use it to guide the clips. I was like, what a wow. What if probably I'm on high speed? That was my own thought, but they said it cannot happen. But I don't know. They said if I was on high speed and then I decided, oh, I have a need to apply my brake, and then I apply the brake, then the carton now falls off from that tire, and then there will be nothing to actually clip my brake pad. So what will happen? That means there may be a probability of maybe me having accidents or brake failure. That was what I was thinking. I said, God, this is really serious. Nobody is interested about human lives, and this is a vehicle that will be carrying passengers up and down. I said, no, 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 no. From that day, I just decided to change that mechanic. So you have lots of issues. I remember also when I had problem with my gearbox. Yes, I had problem with my gearbox. People that know that kind of vehicle I've been talking about, the Sienna, they know that one of the major problem of that vehicle is actually the gearbox. So I had problem with the gearbox. So as someone that doesn't know so much, I decided to meet the mechanic, and I said, okay, look at the mechanic was able to diagnose and say that this is my the brain box in the gearbox that was actually the problem. So I now asked the person a simple question: is it really good for me to repair, or should I change it entirely? Why would I want to change it? It's just a minor issue. Let him take me to his friend. That was how he took me to his friend. Man, I started repairing that gearbox. I was repairing it to an extent that I spent the more than 3 times of how much I would have used to buy a brand new gearbox. I was busy repairing. After repairing, I would take it home for 2 weeks. My driver will call me on the highway and say that the thing have happened again. Sometimes my my gearbox oil would just pour on the road. I was busy spending up and down. If I was not strong, that means I would have one day probably collapsed. But thank God for my previous experience in my tricycle business. So that gave me the kind of mind I needed to try out this new business. So that is actually the issue in transportation business, especially when you want to deal with I mean using Sienna for transportation interstate. So you need to really prepare your mind to deal with all these things I've just mentioned. And then you discover that when you are doing your transportation business, especially when you are doing your Sienna. I'm talking about Sienna now, not other forms of businesses, other forms of transportation business. When you are dealing with Sienna business, it will not look as if you are virtually working for the park authorities or the park people, because every day they take two passengers money. That is about 3,000 naira per loading. Then they are not repairing the vehicle, they are not incurring, they are not spending money for fuel, they are not doing anything. It's just to manage the park. So they are taking that money, and then you that owns the business, you find yourself struggling. Yes, struggling to meet up with your own personal needs, struggling to meet up with the needs of your driver. And most times you even discover that, as I said before, your driver may not even be coming for accounts. Yes, he may not also be coming for account, giving you flimsy excuses. Giving you flimsy excuses. There was a time I even had an encounter with one of my drivers. I now discovered that anytime my vehicle is in good condition, he will be in church. Yes, he will be in church. He said he's a religious person. He will have one program or the other. And then I wouldn't want to give my vehicle to another driver to handle within that period, because that person that you are going to give the vehicle to handle for you within a period of 1 week knows that the vehicle is not going to be with him permanently. So he will use it very rough, to an extent that if he brings 30,000 naira or 20,000 naira or 10,000 naira to you, you will discover that the next week you are going to spend more than 40,000 naira to repair that vehicle. So I will keep it for this particular person, for this particular religious driver of mine. And then you will discover that most times at the peak of the season, he will not be anywhere around. He will not be available to do the work. And these are the problems. These are some of the issues we are having. Some of us, we go to religious houses, we pray for work, we pray for people to give us opportunities that will better our lives. And when these opportunities come, we throw it to the gutters. Yes, we don't take them serious. You forget that the person that gave you that must have struggled. He didn't just pick the money from the streets. He must have done one thing or the other, or even at some point denied himself some basic essentials of life in order to do that kind, or invest his money in that kind of business. So I'm not even talking about the government. Yes, the government that will not even sometimes put basic infrastructures in place. I remember that one of the points where my vehicle was taken off from, there as of that particular time, there was no convenience in that place. Yes, there was no convenience, and every day, because the park was not properly tied, so every day you'll be washing your vehicle. If not, it will look like something that is inside the gutter. But they are collecting this huge amount of money. Nobody cares about providing basic amenities. The roads, the state of the roads are not good. And these are the things that most times makes you to be spending more time, more than enough time in the mechanic because of your suspension system. So these are the things, these are the challenges. Then you talk about, I have mentioned about the law enforcement agencies. Then you make a mistake and even go and enter into the hands of touts on the road. Then you have yourself to be blamed. You understand? Then you also worried about whole lots of things, the safety on the road. I mean, the insecurities on the road, especially when when you are applying interstate. So these are actually my experience in using Sienna for transportation. So in the next episode, I'm going to share with you my experience in my experience in using tricycle. Yes, as I told you, we have been able to give out more than enough, more than a, we have been able to give out a lot of tricycles for hire purchase. So in that particular video, in the next episode about tricycle, I'm going to be telling you how much you can make in tricycle, between tricycle and Sienna business, which one is better. So in case you're seeing my video for the first time, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. And also, don't forget to stay tuned with us in this channel because more as regards to starting from the scratch will be coming your way. I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.